Well, hello again, and welcome again to another reading. And today we're going to be looking at an article entitled The Saints in a Wrong Place. And it's by Baird. But I'm going to change something a little different here today. I'm going to bring up the flip book, and we're going to go through the flip book together. So with that said, let's just do our reading. Saints in the Wrong Place by Baird. 1. Saints in the Wrong Place. Adam outside Eden and God's plan. God's planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there put him, the man in whom he had formed. Genesis 2:8. Oh, golden day, O day of God, when sinless souls the garden trod, in bliss supreme, neither sunny skies, in Eden fair, in paradise. Here we have a saint in the right place, yet the very first of the saints judged from the rapid contrary of the divine narrative, his exalted state of bliss, innocent was the brief duration, the temptation of Eve, and the apparently easy surrender before the sublime of Satan, subtlety of Satan's sudden and complete destroyed their guideless happiness. God was displeased and disobeyed, and the awful thing called sin showed its revolting face on earth. So he drove out the man. Genesis 3:24. The fatal fall of sin, the shame, the doom, the death, the sword, inflamed, the crime, the curse, the tear-filled eyes, the earth no more to praise. The town of man's soul, his capitally before Delopolis to adopt the allegorical language of Baird. Captains resisted, were shot dead by the fury, and my Lord's innocent was poisoned by the foul breath of ill pause. Now here we have the saints in the wrong place, yet we have much more than that. For we have the saints who became a sinner and the federal head of the sinner. But the saints, Adam, did not reach the wrong place all at once. Neither do saints today. We usually arrive at the wrong place by short, easy stages. These steps may be taken before we arrive at the destination. The first step is the wrong state, and the next is the wrong deed, and the third is the wrong place. The state usually precedes the deeds, and the deeds the place. This is, at last, is the order of the fall. It might be well to state here that Adam was not permanently blameworthy of sin. Adam was not deceived. It is true that God inherited him first, then Eve, but Satan. But the passing sentence, it is Satan first, Eve second, and Adam third. And that is the turn true order of the responsibility of guilt. Actually, and principally, Satan was responsible for the fall, and God charged him with it. Genesis 3:14 to 14, 2 Corinthians 11. 3. The instrumental and subjectively. Eve was responsible, and God charged her with it. Genesis 3:13, 1 Timothy 2:14. Morally, and representatively, Adam was accountable, and God charged him with it. Genesis 3:17 and Romans 5:12. Who can estimate the awful consequences of the one wrong deed, or who can sum up the sorrow of that has followed it? The father has eaten sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge. Ezekiel 18:3. Let saints today beware of their example, the influence of their lives long after the doers thereof are dead. Let the exhortation, 2 Peter 1:10, be taken to give diligence. If ye do these things, ye shall not fall. 2. The saints in the wrong place. Adam in Egypt. No other passage in all of the vast realm of revealed truth supplies such a conspiracy illuminated in the saints in the wrong place as Adam, the Hebrew in Egypt. The consequences of the wrong course as described in Scripture and demonstrated by the present-day secular history are well calculated to act as the strong deterrent against our going down into the world, which spiritually is known as Sodom and Egypt. Abraham, went down into Egypt. Genesis 12:10. Originally called from the Chaldean to Canaan, he displayed remarkable enthusiasm in his obedience, but under the pressure of famine, he was deflected from the path of faith and gradually gravitated towards Egypt. He both in position and condition, he became a saint in his wrong place. As to position, he was out of the land. As to condition, he was out of the fear of God. Having thus temporarily abandoned the path of obedience, he is compelled to act in self-defense to ensure self-preservation. He has recounted to the shame of the equivalation, the detestable halfway house between absolute truthfulness and positive lying. Beware of equivocation. A celebrated British statesman once said, equivocation is a halfway to lie and lying in the whole way to hell. And one of our poets had written this, a lie that is half a truth is ever the blackest of lies. A lie that is all a lie may be met and bought outright, but a lie which is half a truth is a hard matter to fight. She is my sister, he says, which was true in a sense, but it was only half a truth. She was also his wife. Sin once committed is easily repented, and although Abraham was severely rebuked by Pharaoh for this deceptiveness, yet within 4 years he took shelter again under the same shelter refuge in Genesis 20 verse 2. Many years afterwards, Isaac fell into the same snare in the same place. Genesis 26:7. One of the most solemn things about sin is hereditary tendencies. It is transmitted from sir to son. The father ate the sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge. But see, a man of God recovers himself. Abraham went up out of Egypt, Genesis 13:1. He is now a saint in the right place. The altar of erection and the tent is repitched as at the beginning. The position of the worshipper is again assumed, and the appearance of the pilgrimage once more established. So far, so good. But Abraham brought up some of the slime of Egypt with him. Hagar, the Egyptian, was now constituted a regular member of his family. In as evil moment, prompted by the restlessness of the impatient flesh, Hagar was given to Abraham, and she became the mother of Ishmael, and he is today the progenitor of the great Mohammedanism world. Behold how great a matter our little fire kindles. Next to Christianity, the Mohammedan religion is the greatest and most aggressive force in the world, and Christianity has no such enemy anywhere. And all this is the fruit of one brief visit to Egypt. How solemn it should all be to us, the revealed and the fearful for countries of iniquity. It shows us how surprisingly terrific sin is. One of the most awful, solemn things about sin is its dreadful reproductiveness. It will live and spread long after the author is dead. 3. The saints in the wrong place. Lot in Sodom. Some super-sensitive soul may feel disposed to dispute Lot's birthright to the appellation of saints, but we hope to demonstrate incontrovertibly from both testaments that he was a just person and therefore responsibly entitled to the dignified name. Converted persons oftentimes do some very unconverted looking things. Lot was not of the swines, but one of the Lord's sheep. Although he was willfully and almost inextricably mixed up in Sodom's mire. He was never really happy there. He was a saint in the wrong place, and he knew it. See 2 Peter 2, 7 and 8. And especially note the word vexed. Lot was associated with Abraham from the very outset of the pilgrimage. Although I fear the limitation was so nominal that real and then real, still he had faith that I judge to be beyond controversy. Abraham had a strong faith. Lot had a weak faith. Abraham had much faith. Lot had little. But the difference in their faith lay not in the quality, but in the quantity. Having so little in common with unalienable in everyday matters, in somewhat bewildering to us, for we read that no serious disreputable between them until they returned from Egypt. And even then, the disagreements is confined to their herdsmen. A compromise was easily effected, however, and Abraham was amazingly Lot offered Lot his choice in the country. Rash Lot, guided by mere solitary sense, speedily selected the well-watered plains of the Jordan. Poor blind man, little did he dream that those very fertile plains would soon be burned up. All sin stands on the precious, and Lot's disclaration from the point is rapid and deep. We soon find his fraternizing with the detestable Sodomites, and even calling them brethren, inexplicably faulty. His daughters, too, engaged by the world's broadest ways, formed evil alliances and entered into marriage relationships with Sodom's sinful sons. So such for Lot's dominating effect. Meantime, Sodom and sin raped rapidly. God is about to give to the world a solemn exhibition of his goodness and his severity towards Lot's goodness towards Sodom. Severity, the wrath and destruction had already been predicated. Angels have been dispatched to destroy the city, but Lot must first be delivered. I cannot do anything till thou comest thither. Genesis 19:22. Astonishing statement. Does not this one sentence alone demonstrate beyond controversy that the Lot was no mere worldling, that I judge to be undespicable? Some may be inclined to argue that Lot was delivered through the righteousness and intercession of Abraham, but we now proceed to produce from the New Testament indisputable evidence that Lot had a character and a righteousness peculiar personality. The Spirit of God calls him just Lot. He is spoken of as a righteous man. We are told he is a righteous soul. It is distinctly stated that His soul was daily vexed with the godly environment. And not only so, but is the strong inference for his being inclined in the word godly. 2 Peter 2:7-9. Lot, he was an incorrigible world monarch in the depth of his degradation. He became a Moab, a progenitor of Moab and Ammon, the most inconceivable of all Israel's enemies. He stands before us as an illustration of the saints with a saved soul, but a lost life. Oh, brethren, dear, and the awful example of Lot before our eyes, let us keep ourselves unspotted from the world. Brothers, remember Lot. Sisters, remember Lot's wife. 4 saints in the wrong place, the Israelites in the wilderness. Hitherto we have been occupied with individual saints who have done wrong and have gone wrong. But in the present paper, we propose to warrant the range of vision and incline the assembly may go wrong and do wrong as well as an individual, that the multitude may be led astray and overcome and easily and completely as the unit. Israel in the wilderness presented to our perspective the whole congregation of saints in the wrong place, and the thought of becoming all the more startling when we remember that the congregation numbered in the lower possibility computation in the aggressive 2 million persons. God had a well-defined purpose in leading this extraordinary host through the wilderness, for we well know from the inspired narrative that it was no part of the original intention to detain them there 40 years. He intended the wilderness to be the king's highway between Egypt and Canaan. But on account of their stubbornness and their rebellion, he changed the wilderness into a dwelling place and ultimately converted it into a vast cemetery in which he entered into the adults who left Egypt, except for Caleb and Joshua. From all that can be gathered from Holy Scripture, it appears that the whole nation arrived safely in the wilderness of Paran towards the end of the 2nd month in the 2nd year after their miraculous emancipation from Egypt. It was from this point that the 12 spies were dispatched to search out the land, and here the people under Moses awaited the return and report. From Numbers 19, we learn the solemn sequence. All the spies agreed together as to the abundant fertility of Canaan, but 10 of them also saw enormous giants and gigantic city walls. Caleb and Joshua were not blinded at all than the others saw, but they saw God beside and urging the people to take possession. Their faith and their faithfulness nearly cost them their lives. God preserved them, however, and showed the 10 spies on the spot, and slew the 10 spies on the spot through plagues and for bringing back an evil, slanderous report of the land. The whole host now ordered back into the wilderness for 40 years, that they might know God's breach of promise. Amazing expression from the stage until entering Canaan 40 years later. They were a nation of saints and the wrong place. Now all this ought to be most soul-searching and heart-humbling in this present-day believers. We are expressly informed that those that overthrew in the wilderness are our examples, and that the record of our abomination, 1 Corinthians 10. I don't know a more humbling meditation for the Church of God today than this, that 603,550 persons perished in the wilderness for the common sin of unbelief. Numbers 2, verse 32. Since the formation of the church, God has oftentimes to pursue the same solemn reputation measures with assemblies, and painstaking examples of Revelation 2 and 3 will abundantly disclose this awful fact. The 7 churches of Asia which are there, the candlestick has long since been removed from Ephesus. Laodicea has been spewed out of Christ's mouth generations ago. And have we not personally known cities, towns, and villages wherein were to be found healthy, vigorous assemblies? And where are they today? Some immensely discriminated, while others have suffered total annihilation. Some take heed, brethren, lest there be in any one of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living God. Hebrews 3, verse 12. 5. Saints in the wrong place. Miriam outside the camp. In the preceding paper, we have been considering the weakness of the wonders of male saints, and it may be that some of our dear sisters have been securely enjoying these revelations and inwardly congregating themselves on their immunity from exposure. But alas, alas, there too shall find the feminine saints within herself as the superabundance of these like passions, which she so easily discovered and so severely condemned in her masculine friend. Moreover, have our esteemed sisters been reading between the lines and forming treatises, they would have observed how very intimately Eve was associated with Adam in the transgression, and Sarah played a most conspiring part in Abraham's backsliding, and Lot's wife may have been more responsible for the downfall than appeared on the surface of the scripture narrative. However, in the matter of weakness and transgression, it is scarcely seen that one sex to stone the other, for both sexes possess in a small degree the proverbial touch of nature, which makes them much akin So far by the introduction. Now for the meditation on Marian. The great episode stands conspiracy forth in the history and for the event. We now propose to concentrate our attentions on First, our introduction to Marian on the banks of the famous river Nile, whither, as a slanderous maiden, she had been dispatched to oversee the destiny of her infant brother Moses. Her whole compliment on this important occasion proclaims her to have been a tactical and extraordinary ability, resulting in the restoration of her brother to his mother, henceforth to be nourished and educated at the expense of Pharaoh's daughter, and very dainty dish of very delicate diplomacy. Exodus 2. Great publicly characterized her second appearance as Marian the prophetess. She led forth the women of Israel in the great triumphant song on the banks of the Red Sea, Exodus 15:20. Thus far had been extremely credible and praiseworthy. Had her history terminated here, all generations would have called her blessed. But the third episode cast a dark death onward that otherwise noble and commendable life. In Numbers 12, the black shadow is introduced into the glorious landscape. A fly of death entered the fragrant ointment, causing it to emit a sticky savor. Marian and Aaron spake against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married. Marian's name stands first in the chart sheet. What had his marriage with an Ethiopian woman to do with God speaking through him? Ostensibly, the accusation was leveled at his marriage, but in reality it was aimed at his unique position before God. And besides, 40 years have elapsed between the marriage and the accusation. Why rake up the past? Deep down at the bottom of the burning of all consuming fire, and the unquenchable jealousy, but God's miraculously interposed on behalf of the meek man, and Marian is instantaneously smitten with leprosy and subject to a temporary excommunication from the camp. What a humiliating situation. The leader's sister excluded from the fellowship, and the whole nation retarded from several days in the progress towards Canaan. This sad circumstance furnishes a solemn lesson to all saints. Marian outside the camp, a saint in her wrong place. Surely her sin was a common sin of a jealous, unbridled tongue. A prayerful pursuit of the 3rd chapter of James by all believers would accompany an incalculable amount of good today. Then we have God's estimation of the human tongue, and the most humiliated it is. Evil speaking is far too prevalent among the many Christian assemblies by being retarded and its progress and weakness, and the testimony there in the indiscreet work of some meddlesome tongues. 6. Saints in the wrong place. Samson in the prison house. The Bible abounds in biographical, and such biograph is only God would dare to write biographical sketches of human life, written and edited by men, are often very one-sided and consequently most misleading. The vigorous side of the life under review is revealed, and revealed whether the victory side of the same life is either concealed or condoned. Nor so with God. It is written, when he presented the history of any life in biographics, he tells the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth, whereas the faithful portrait of human character and the action more conspiring than in God's biography of Samson. Miraculous manifestation of power seemed to have overshadowed Samson from cradle to tomb. Born under very extraordinary circumstances, and early in life caused to experience miraculous exhibits of the Holy Spirit influence, no other man in the time possessed such a prosperity and possibilities of godly and usefulness, and yet few men have fallen so heavily as Samson fell, or found such depths of disaster and disgrace. He stands before us as a courageous example of normal physical strength, mingled together with the most amazing moral weakness, as we follow him along the ever-changing pathway, heavily outcast at times, with a dark shadow and a spirit declined and defined, whether at the time lit up most luminous with great acts of supernatural might and triumph, who can refrain from feeding and almost utterly sorrow or see him finally incarcerated in the Philistines' prison without a pang of unexperiencing regret. And he did grind in the prison house. Judges 16:21. A saint in the wrong place, surely he who was once the terror of the Philistines is now shown, and his strength befitted his sight, and deprived of his liberty. But in my judgment, has not yet reached the deepest dip of his appalling degradation. There is more abject humility to come. The Philistines, convinced in great religion convocation to celebrate Samson's downfall and to offer a special sacrifice to the fish idol god Dagon. And now comes the most solemn sight of all, and a sad scene called solemn that he might make sport. Judges 16:25. What is humiliating in a spectacle as here, this mighty man, of whom upon the time has submitted that Philistines' hip and thigh and the thousandth is now let out in his blind helplessness by a punty lad to furnish amusement for gasping heathen rebels. Oh, the shame of it! Oh, the pain of it! We rub our eyes and ask, is it the same man? The same man is this, the man who rent the lion as it was a kid, the very man in this, the same man who slaughtered 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of an ass, the same man. Can this be the man who carried away the gates of Gaza on his back? No other man. How then this change, and whence the cause? He began in the spirit, but he gave way to the flesh, and succumbed to the lust thereof. And have we not had men evil in our day, who were mighty in word and deed, and who was the Spirit of God, and who were a terror to the whole district? Where are they now? And the evil hour, when not walking in the Spirit, they fulfilled the lust of the flesh. And now they are the just in the same neighborhood where they were formerly feared and respected. The lesson of Lot in Sodom, beware the love of the world. The lesson in Solomon in the prison house is beware of the flesh. 7. Saints in the wrong place. David on the rough. The wrong place lies in the very close approximation to the right place, and the pathway difficult, sometimes to discern, by equally easily access to all connection. The two places in the Integrant Bundy and the incredible allegory graphically describe how the very delicacy constructed style, separation between the narrow way and the enchanted ground. The witness is true, and no, not whether it is all the vast expanse of biblical biography. Have we a more conspiring illustration of how easy it is for even the eminent and the experienced saint to find the wrong place than in King David? Israel, sweet psalmist, on the roof of a royal palace, how he came to be there at that particular junction is a subject brought in the most intense interest to every child of God. It was a season of the year when kings went forth to battle, and at no other point in the whole calendar was David present more urgently required on the battlefield. The national peace and the security was annually jeopardized. Vanquished foes were eager to revive former humiliation in battle. Old enemies were anxious to pay off old scores. Unsettled disputes were clamoring for adjustment, but David tarried still in Jerusalem. 2 Samuel 11:1. The reason of his tarrying is not revealed, but the result of it has been written for our learning. Rise up from his crouch and dispose of insolent restlessness and wandering amidst out into the twilight on the flat housetop. He saw what he ought not to have seen, though being where he ought to not have been, where we ought not to be. we see things we ought not to see. The initial act of the evil now being over, David has not very long to wait for the aftermath. Sin is seldom singled for the seed of the second sin. It is always concealed in the heart of the flesh of first sin. Its seed is in itself. More wrongdoing must be restored to its order to cover wrong already done, and still further wrong to conceal former wrong. In the history of David, there now appears an appalling precision of sin and counter sin, of more sins and counter past sins, under the global plea of ostentation the first hand in the progress of war. He commanded Uriah, Bathsheba's husband, to be sent from the battle after brief conversation with him, and ordered him to his own house, trusting that he would present her, the husband at home, would completely cover his crime. But the plot did not succeed. Uriah was not a sensuous man David took him to be, so he must need resort to another tactic to accomplish his purpose. Uriah is summoned a second time, and on this occasion permits to dine with the king personally. David sees that Uriah is supplied with a corporate draught of wine, expecting that when this inflamed with liquor, he will surely seek his own house and thus gloss over David's guilt. Notwithstanding, he is again foiled, and a crafty attempt is shuffled sin. Uriah was an extraordinary man, and eventually held the honor of his country far before his own ease and gratification. But although David is foiled, he is but no means defeated. He sends Uriah back to Joab with the letter arranging for his death, and actually dedicated how it might be accomplished without executing undue suspicion and exploitable behavior, using guilt to cloak guilt, sublime to smoothen sin. Such is the inferior character of the constitution of sin. Its very nature demands concealment. Man only covers for sin is more sin. After Uriah's death, David breathed more freely and acted more boldly. Bathsheba is now permanently installed in the royal palace, but God is too holy and righteous and loving David too deeply to allow such conduct to pass unchanged, unexpected, unpunished. Hence the vast of Nathan to the king's apartment, with the innumerable parable of the poor man and the ewe lamb, under the prophet's pretense, preaching David's conscience is sounded, searched, and subdued, and poured out his soul to God, sobbed, and promulgated grief in Psalms 51. O my soul, what lessons would thy God communicate to thee through this strange exponent? Surely to keep thy right place, and beware of the lust of the eye, the solemn of the picture of the intensified when we learn that David's sin was not an indiscrimination of the thoughtless youth, but a transgression of a mature manhood. Aged efforts no protection against sin, multiple of years being no immunity from the temptation. Not long before George Mueller died, he prayed a strange pathetic prayer, O Lord, prevent thy servant from ever becoming a wicked old man. May God graciously preserve us from sins of old age. 8. Saints in the wrong place, Jehoshaphat and Ahab. The unequal yoke together of believers with unbelievers under the circumstances whatsoever, whether religious, social, commercial, or material, is the displeasing and dishonoring of God, and always discredited and distorted to those who allow themselves to become ensnared. And although God oftentimes mercifully interposes on behalf of his erring people, and sometimes even bringing blessings out of the burdensome, nevertheless the sins of overstepping his commandments should in no way be minimized. Discipline measures must be invariably followed. Every diversion from the straight line of revealed truth. Many unconverted people welcome with undistinguished satisfaction the companionship and partners of people of God, because certain beliefs occur to them through such association. In fact, the presence of a few believing at certain worldly functions give a color of religiousness to the whole movement. The protectiveness presented of God is always with his people, and sometimes the unregenerated receive all the benefits of the overshadowing power because of their close association with his people. Ahab's son, Jeroboam, unquestionably enjoyed the protection, though Jehoshaphat for a season. 2 Kings 3:4. Jehoshaphat joined a firm with Ahab. 2 Chronicles 18:1. And during the entire period of the unhallowed combination, he was a saint in the wrong place. The solution for the Confederate evidence originated with him. He was the first to move. He went down to Ahab, but someone may be disposed to ask, what in lies the evil and danger in the affirmative? Because on the part of both kings, there was a tactic ignored of the rendering of the tribes asunder, which act as a distinction retributive measure from God for the sins of Solomon. 1 Kings 11:1. Ahab had not been long in Jehoshaphat's company before he proposed an assault of arms at Gilead. Jehoshaphat, having already committed himself to Ahab by the presence of Samaria, now more deeply involved himself by the promise, I am as thou art, and my people as thy people. 1 Kings 22:4. But the conscience of ill ease, a kind of institution, distrust, disturbance, and peace of mind, and he expressed the desire to consult and the prophet the Lord. It is somewhat, believe, request. The proverb warns us against making inquiries after making vows. Proverbs 20, verse 25. Better to make an inquiry first of our vows. Afterwards, however, the league and made Jehoshaphat must abide by the arrangement. The battle raged, but for the protected power of God's presence, Jehoshaphat would have been a dead man. The conflict had most distorted conclusion, a disastrous conclusion for both Israel and Judah. Ahab was slain, and Jehoshaphat was permitted to return to Jerusalem in peace. And now comes the Lord's messenger with the Lord's message. Shouldst thou help the ungodly and love them, that thou hatest the Lord? 2 Chronicles 19:2. The unequal yoke in all ratification is the helping of the ungodly and a loving and those who hate God. We would have judged that one such solemn lesson would have been enough for Jehoshaphat, but not so. For within a year we find him forming another such alliance with Ahab's son, 2 Kings 3. But that second lesson caused him from unequally yoked. Latter, Joram desired to arrange a naval alliance, but Jehoshaphat had had enough. 1 Kings 22:49, and learned slow and painfully, but he learned at last, and wondered if the saints of today have learned what a monstrously evil thing it is in the sight of God when they form unholy associations with sinners of the world. God has given us his mind once and forever on the momentary monstrous matter. The mind of contrasting to 2 Corinthians 6:14-16. Righteousness versus unrighteousness. Light versus darkness. Christ versus Baal. Believers versus infidels. Temples of God versus idols. There can be no companionship. Let there be no compromise. And that ends our reading for this session. And bye for now.